Shere. Jeremy is a content producer for solopreneurs, but also B2B brands, regardless of size. If you're in the B2B space and you're looking to produce some content, Jeremy's your guy. But we're going to get into that a little bit more detail. I don't want to try to explain it for you. Instead, I'd like to thank you for taking a few minutes today, and I'm going to put you on the spot, Jeremy.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you, if we just met for the first time and I said, "Nice to meet you, Jeremy. What do you do for a living?" What would you say in 60 seconds or less? What's your best elevator pitch?
Yeah, I'd say I help solopreneurs, B2B brands of any size, small, medium, large, create high quality, authentic content that you don't have time to create yourself to grow your to grow your brand online. That's
Okay.
that's like the 30-second version.
That's like the 11-second version.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
that's
That's
very
I could go on, but I mean that's basically what it is.
well. That's good. I think that's a successful elevator pitch because I know what you do. I know who your audience is. You've kind of excluded actually any kind of like consumer oriented brand. It's just for B2B. And I know what the pain point is, for those who don't have maybe the time to create content on their own, that you're relieving them of that. So I think you packed a lot of punch in 11 seconds there. So
Yeah,
well
well,
done.
okay, good. That's good. Glad to hear it.
That's good. So let's dig into that a little bit deeper, though, because I know that's just kind of a surface level thing to give people watching this an opportunity to understand on the surface what you do. But just digging into it a little bit deeper, like what problem do you solve really for people in that B2B space?
Yeah, so the problem we solve is that a lot of B2B brands, especially if you're a solopreneur, if you're a small business, maybe it's you and a handful of other people, or
Mhm.
even if you're, a bigger business than that, 50 people. If you don't have your own content marketing team in-house that is pumping out content on the regular, and yet you're online and you need high quality content to represent your brand and to get people to know, like, and trust you, which I think most, if you're doing B2B and even if you're B2C, most of the time you need that digital content is king, as they say, right?
Mhm.
The problem is you don't have time to do it unless you're a content producer, unless you just love doing it. If that is not your business, you have everything else on your plate. You're trying to run a business. You just don't have enough time to create enough high quality content at a high quality level consistently enough to really get ROI on it.
Mhm.
You can do it, but it's going to take up a huge amount of your time. And that's a problem. And the result often is you end up with like content graveyards. You have a LinkedIn profile where you sure meant to post every day or at least twice a week, and you did that for a little while, and then you kind of didn't. And now people look at your profile and it's like, oh yeah, it's been 2 months since you posted anything. That doesn't look great. You
Right.
have an Instagram channel that you started with much enthusiasm, and then people go to it and it's like, oh, the last post was from 2020. What's going on? You know, Graveyards.
Yep.
And
I've
again, it's all
experienced
that
that
you
where when I see someone's blog and then I look at
yeah.
the date and it was from like 5 years ago, it's like, "Oh, that's depressing."
Even if the content's good, you're just like, that just doesn't give the right vibe, right?
Right.
Especially if you have a stake in demonstrating your knowledge and expertise. You want to get people to trust you, and there's only so many one-on-one meetings you can do. You need just to be out there online. So again, the problem, you just don't have the time or energy or wherewithal or skills to make that happen all the time. You need help with it.
And I
So
think
that's the
that's
problem.
yeah, and I think that's incredibly common, because
Yeah.
as entrepreneurs, we our time and attention is divided, right? Because whatever product or service we provide, we really need to spend a lot of time providing it and taking care of our customers and handling, billing and
Yeah.
invoicing and accounting and doing the thing and making the widget and doing all this stuff. That in itself is a full-time job. So how do you find the time to simultaneously create enough content and get out there, which is just takes an enormous amount of effort to do. So I think that's a very common problem.
Yeah. And I think a common solution, not the solution we provide, but a common solution is you say, well, okay, I'll hire some freelancers to do that.
Hmm.
I'll find someone on Fiverr or Upwork or whatever, and I'll have them write one blog post a month for me. Um, and I'll have someone write some LinkedIn post or whatever, whatever.
Hmm.
And the problem there, I think it's a suboptimal solution because it's not you. The content will be generic to one degree or another. The more you pay, the better the overall quality will be,
Hmm.
but it'll still be somewhat generic because it's not you. Only you can really create the content that is literally authentic. That's original because it's coming from your mind. You
Right.
hire someone else to do it, you're not really going to get that.
Right. You might get 50% there, maybe even 80% of the way there, but you're never going to get there 100%. Which I think, if I'm not getting ahead of you, leads to my second question. Then we've talked about what problem you solve, but now how do
Yeah.
you solve it? Because I think you've presented the common way to attack that problem, but I think you have a little bit of a unique approach yourself.
Yeah. So I'll start by explaining how until now we've been help trying to solve it and how I'm changing my thinking a little bit.
Okay.
So I've been primarily a podcast producer, and our solution to that problem has been through podcasting.
Hmm.
So for our clients, we'll work with them from the jump and help them create a podcast with all the strategy behind it all and all that. And the model is, okay, we'll work with someone from your business. They'll be the host, and we'll start up this show, and it's going to be all about your audience and the things they care about. You'll be the host, and then you'll find a bunch of guests to come on the show. They can be your existing customers, but even better, let's bring in your top prospects and so on. And you'll interview them and get to know them. So there's like networking value there. And we'll spin this into all kinds of other content. You'll get the audio. We'll record video too. We can repurpose it as blog posts. That's what
Hmm.
we've been doing up until pretty recently.
Okay.
The issue with that, and the reason I've been rethinking it, is that, again, the initial problem is that our customers don't have time. In doing this podcast play, they're still spending time on it, a considerable amount of time, just by necessity, right? Someone has to be the host. Usually someone who's never hosted a podcast. They have to learn how to do that. They
Hmm.
have to devote a whole bunch of their time into meeting with guests to do prep calls and then doing the interviews. And, there's a whole art and science to being a good interviewer. It takes a long time to get good at it,
Yeah.
right? You have to find the guests, or you have to pay us to find them. It can get pretty pricey,
Right.
right? One way or another, there's a whole lot of just coordination that's going on that you kind of have to deal with. Even if we're handling the guest booking and all that, still, there's just a lot of moving parts and pieces. So yeah, you can get good content, but it is making more demands on your time than it would otherwise if you were not doing a podcast.
Right.
So in some ways, I was like, we're kind of adding to the problem, you know? And that's not great. And that's friction. So then I thought, okay, how could I flip this process on its head, so to speak? And here's what I have come up with. And so this is essentially how we now solve this problem.
Okay.
Instead of you, let's say it was you, Andrew, instead of you being the host of the podcast,
Hmm.
we'll set it up so that you are going to be the star of your own ongoing content series. Just like you would if you were a guest on other podcasts, which anyone who's ever done that, it's a lot easier than hosting your own show.
Yeah, that's a piece of cake. You just show up and talk.
Just show up and talk, right?
Hmm.
Easiest thing in the world. That's what we're going to do, right? So we'll work with you, get to know your business, and then we will interview you. We'll be the host. And so
Okay.
the emphasis here is not on the host, it's on the star, and that's you. So to solve the time problem, we'll batch this. So we'll set aside once a month, we'll set aside 2 hours. We'll decide here are for next month's content, you want to cover these 4 things. 4 things that your audience really cares most about that you want to hit according to your content plan. We'll block out 2 hours and we'll knock those out. I'll interview you. I'm an expert interviewer. I've done thousands of these. I'm trained in it, and I'm really good at it. There's an art and a science to being a good interviewer. I bring it to the table.
That's
You
awesome.
just need to show up. We'll have a great discussion on these 4 different topics and arrange it in a way so it's easy then on the back end to chop them out into 4 discrete episodes. And we produce it so each one has its own intro and music and all that. So we'll record audio and video. And then we'll produce this to create multimedia content that's going to solve that content problem for you, right? So every single
Okay.
month, from an investment of 2 hours of your time to have a good conversation about topics you care about, you're going to get really as much or as little as you want. That can be, you're going to get video, different kind of video clips for different parts of the funnel, for top of the funnel, middle of the funnel.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get, if you want it, you can get an audio episode for that longer form content, right? We can publish weekly episode. You're going to get, we can easily transform each episode into 1 or more LinkedIn posts. We can transform each episode into a blog post, right?
So it's like that. Let's focus on 2 hours of your time to record and extract your brain, your thoughts, your concepts, and your personality
Yeah,
into something that's really, really solid. And then from that, your team can now start dicing and slicing and putting it in all these different formats.
right. It,
Which I
it,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, that's exactly the concept. And it's high level content, meaning it's authentic and organic because it's coming directly from you. That's much different than the model I described before, right? When you just kind of have a freelancer who's like, yeah, just I want 4 blog posts on these 4 topics. Go ahead. They're going to go to Google and look up some stuff. They're just going to use ChatGPT.
Right.
And what you're going to get is going to be generic. This is the exact opposite of that. This is as authentic and organic as you can get because it's material that is drawn out of your brain through conversation, which is the
Right.
single best way to put you at your best, for you to demonstrate your expertise, your knowledge, your insights. I posit there is no better or easier or frankly more enjoyable way to do that than having a conversation and kind of thinking out loud.
Which I think answers that third question that I had lined up there about how you're different from other digital content agencies. And so just kind of reflecting back what you've said, if you take someone, a freelancer or a ghostwriter or something like that, they're going to interview you and try to mimic your style, mimic what it is that you want to talk about so they can do that on your behalf to save you time. But the quality of what you get, it's never going to be the same as what you could do yourself if it weren't for the fact that you just don't have time to do that.
Yeah.
You're flipping that on its head and you're saying you just take a couple hours and spend it with you, Jeremy, and you're going to record your client as they're being interviewed. So it really is them. It's not someone mimicking them. It is
Yeah.
them and their true self. And then you're taking that and creating a whole content strategy around that.
Yeah. And I think there's kind of a hierarchy of content. If your goal is to have authentic content,
Right. Which
that
it
is
should be.
organic, which I would argue it should be. I mean, I think everyone would agree. Like, should content be authentic? Yes, everyone agrees. But what does that actually mean? I think the most direct way to what we actually mean by that is that it's you being you,
Right.
you know? And I think there's a hierarchy of content if that's your goal. I think number one is video because you
Mhm.
get the whole thing. You get the person's body language and their voice and all that. And in conversation, right? It's not the kind of weird, stilted, like I'm solo performing for the camera,
Yeah,
right?
because that is not the same. It doesn't matter how good you are, you can't be the same as someone as when you're just in a live conversation with somebody.
Unless you're like an amazing performer, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
like at the
But
highest
you're
level, most people are not, you know,
right. Yeah.
but if it's you in conversation, and that's much different. That's you. That is you being you.
Right.
Usually at your best, right? At your least kind of formal, you know,
Mhm.
and and so I think video, top of the hierarchy. Right below that, audio, because you get the voice, and
Right.
audio has the advantage of you can go deeper. That's the longer form content, right? So video, say you're using it for LinkedIn, it needs to be short, right? Less than a
Mhm.
minute, probably.
Mhm.
Maybe a few minutes if you really have something you want to feature, right? But that's top of the funnel stuff. And you're just trying to get people's attention, just trying to get people to know you a little bit. But if the 30-second clip is good, and ideally you're picking like the most intriguing thing that you said, right, from
Mhm.
that episode. Ideally, you want at least some people to be like, "Oh, that's interesting. Is there more of that? What is?" And you're like, "Yeah, that's part of a larger discussion, actually. For those who want to learn more, here's a link to the 15-minute discussion we had about that."
Right.
And it takes you right to the podcast, right? That's more like maybe middle-ish of the funnel content for people who are want to dive a little deeper down into your world, you know? And then I think lastly on the hierarchy is written content. It's much
Mhm.
harder to get your personality across in writing.
Right.
Again, the highest skilled writers, that's what differentiates of the best writers, right?
Right.
They can channel you and your voice, and or if you're a good writer, like the most direct way is for you to write it. But even so, it's just really hard to get your personality across in writing.
Yeah, that's an art for sure.
But you have a much better chance of it, or who you're hiring to write, a much better chance if they are working with material that came directly from you,
Right. Yep.
recorded, not just their impression of what you said,
And
but
not what they think you would say in that
right, not
situation.
just what they think. Literally, here's the transcript of what you said. We're now going to just reformat this into written content that is literally using the exact words you used. We're
Right.
just going to format it in a way that it's easy to read, essentially.
So you start with a video because that's the top of the hierarchy, and
Yeah.
then you can just kind of trickle this down and reuse it in a strategic way. And now it's your authentic voice from top to bottom, not someone trying to sound like you. It is
Yeah.
you.
It is you. And by the way, you can include other people too, right? So in that 2-hour block where we're doing these interviews, as you want to, if there's someone out there that you want to get to know, you want to include their voice and their thoughts in the conversation, by all means, bring them on. You have
Yeah.
every opportunity to do that. It's just that you don't have to.
Right.
It's not in the traditional podcast model. You kind of have to do that. You have to keep the guest pipeline full. It becomes a big hassle, becomes a task that either you have to pay for or you have to do it yourself. This
Hmm.
way, you have this content series that you can use strategically as a way to get time with people if you want or need to, but on your schedule. It's
Right.
no longer a task, it's more a strategic tool you can use to do that when it makes sense for you.
Which in itself, I think it's just going to add to that authenticity because now you're doing it with someone that you wanted to and on your timetable and not this forced, hey, every week I gotta book another guest type of
Right.
deal.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great, Jeremy. I really appreciate you taking some time to chat with me. I think this is a really interesting approach that's kind of flipping the script on your traditional idea of what podcasting would look like, and it's not podcasting anymore. it's
No.
it's content production in a way that maximizes the time that you have, because as entrepreneurs we have so little time, but we all recognize the need for a good content strategy. You're basically saying sit down with me for a couple hours once a month, and we're going to extract every ounce of that and turn it into this great content machine for you, which to me is a really compelling kind of concept. So uh, really neat to see how you're thinking that through and what you're offering. If you watching this or listening to this want to get in touch with Jeremy, the best way to do that is just go to conversa.io conversa.com. That's conversa.com. And I'll include a link to that down below. But Jeremy, really love having you in our community here for First Gen Entrepreneurs. I love your contributions and taking a few minutes out of your day to chat with me so we can learn more about what you do.
Well, thank you, Andrew. And, I just want to add real quick that, of course, you can also contact me in the First Gen community. I'm on the site every single day, checking my messages and stuff, also on LinkedIn. And I just want to thank you, Andrew, for first having me on the spotlight. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And just the community that you've built is really great, and I really value it. And shout out to anyone watching this, all members of the community. You guys are awesome too. That's what makes this community what it is. This group of people who've joined. Really glad to be part of it, and glad to be able to contribute to it too. So thank you for starting all this off.
Yeah, man, this has been fun. And I look forward to all of us, just kind of growing our businesses together as a group. It's been a lot of fun so far. And I think we're going places together.
Indeed.
All right. Talk soon, Jeremy. Take care.
Bye bye.